In this video, I'll tell you about 3 things that I learned about sports photography that will help you improve your sports photos. And if you stay until the end of the video, I'll throw in an extra tip on how you can maximize the aperture of your lenses for sports photography. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. For tip number 1, camera settings. For sports photography, I shoot on manual mode and have my settings like this more often than not. For my shutter speed, I have it at 500th of a second, and the lowest can be at 320th of a second. This is to make sure that I'm able to freeze any actions without any blur. You go below 320th of a second, and you run the risk of images that are not crisp. As for my aperture, for low lighting situations, I have it at the widest as possible. In my case, for 1.8 lenses, I usually leave it at 2.0 or 2.2. More on that later. For the ISO, if it's a low light situation again, I set it at maximum of 5000 ISO. This is to limit the grains you get in your images. Also, make sure your image quality is set to RAW in order for you to have the opportunity to edit it later. Last part of settings are focus mode and release mode. On my Nikon, my focus mode for sports is AFC or continuous. This will allow the camera to continuously adjust focus while you're pressing the autofocus button. This will tie up to tip number 2. For the release mode, I have it on continuous H on my Nikon so that the camera takes pictures as long as you hold the shutter button. Moving to tip number 2, use your back button focus. This ties up with the previous tip about focus mode and release mode. You can do this by going to your camera's menu, select Custom Settings menu, select Autofocus, and select AF Activation. Make sure you choose AF On only. What this does is it removes the autofocus function from the half press button of your shutter and transfer it to your AFL button at the back. By pressing and holding the back button focus while shooting allows you to maximize the AF continuous mode of your camera. It will now adjust continuously while you shoot as long as you hold it, thus making sure that your subject is always at focus. For tip number 3, explore your camera's autofocus area modes. In the case of Nikon Z50, it has several options. The default settings is single point autofocus. This shows up like a small box on your viewfinder. However, using this is a little bit more challenging because you have to make sure that your subject is always within that small box. Other options include wide S, wide L, and auto area autofocus. For the first 2, these are bigger boxes for your camera to focus on. However, it runs the risk of focusing on something else within that box. As for auto area autofocus, I would not suggest this because you won't have the control on where you want to focus. The camera will just decide it for you. As for my experience, the mode that fits my shooting style well is the dynamic area autofocus. It's basically just like a single point autofocus. However, the dots around it assist the small box in whatever it's trying to focus on. This mode allows me to maintain crisp focus on my subject's faces even if they're moving. As for my bonus tip, always look for your aperture sweet spot. In my case, for example, I like shooting with my 85 1.8. However, instead of shooting at 1.8, I usually drop it down to 2.0 or 2.2. This is what photographers usually call as the sweet spot. When shooting at the widest aperture, sometimes you'll notice that only the person's face is in focus while the rest of the body is not. It is for this reason that I like to move 1 to 2 stops above my widest aperture. This will allow me to capture more of my subject without losing the bokeh of the image. Another bonus tip that I like to share is to make sure that you practice. All the tips I've given will help you more if you get to practice them. So go out there and take sports photos. Lastly, if you're still watching, I would just like to say thank you very much for your support. I'm almost at 200 subscribers already and I'm enjoying every step of the way. Please do let me know in the comments if you like these type of contents. Once again, thank you and see you on my next video. Peace.